Most of you probably know about Pompeii, a volcanic eruption and people frozen in stone. But these are just the tip of the iceberg. When you hear about what happened in the city, how people ended up like this, how a mother and daughter playing together suddenly ended up like this, and how they were found, you will surely be shocked. You need to hear why they were punished so severely. In a moment, we will walk among the ruins of the city of Pompeii together. We will witness the city in its former glory and experience the disaster with them. The last days of Pompeii. October 23rd, 79 AD. The day before the disaster. Pompeii, the ancient city of Italy, symbolizing the degeneration of the Roman Empire. A place where the richest people in the world lived. A place of magnificent buildings, masterpieces, the most beautiful women in the region, and gladiators fighting in the city's arena. A place of abundance and prosperity. If you look at the map of the city from above, you can see the city like a big fish. It was clearly designed that way. After all, Pompeii is also a port city. The thing on the right that resembles the fish's eye is an amphitheater. This amphitheater was a place where gladiators entertained the city's people and the wealthy. Gladiators would enter here and fight to the death in front of thousands of spectators. The wealthy would have the gladiators torn apart by lions. They kept all the profits from them for themselves. It wasn't just people. Animal slaughter was also taking place. Gladiators would sometimes fight wild animals just for entertainment. Because after a certain time, they were looking for new things to add excitement. Who knows? There may be clearer stories in this arena. Let's leave the arena aside and move on to life in the city. This street you see was a place where the merchants, traders, and people from many walks of life of the time passed by in their horse-drawn carriages. And over time, this caused these potholes to form. This place, where thousands of people passed through, was of course polluted with horse manure, food and drink waste, and other debris. Or it would fill with rainwater. For these reasons, some people didn't even want to step foot here. Therefore, stepping stones were built to protect against such elements. This way, they could cross over without stepping in dirt, mud, or water. Or they would ride in horse-drawn carriages. You won't see jumping stones like this in most ancient cities. This also shows, in a way, that they didn't place much importance on cleanliness in the city. You will see these hollow stones at certain points in the city. Food was placed in containers in these hollows and served. The burning wood in the hollow space below was designed to keep the food warm. Some of these restaurants on the city streets are preserved in the same way today. The food ingredients in the jars at the back are almost 2,000 years old. We see frescoes or wall paintings on many walls in many places in the city. I guess sexuality and nudity were very comfortable behaviors and attitudes for them. Some wealthy people even decorated some of the bedrooms in their homes with these kinds of immoral paintings. Perhaps some of them were even paintings they drew themselves. This place with the protruding wall you see is the city's brothel. Despite the destruction of many parts of the city, this place seems to have stood tall for later generations to see. Because there is a cautionary situation here. It is just a small place that shows the sinfulness of the city's people. What makes this place different is that the men were not only with women. They were also interested in their own gender. This immorality was spread throughout the city. Even the thoughts of the city's people were filled with evil. Let me show you an example that illustrates this. What you see here is a cursed tablet. They would write on this lead tablet what they wanted to happen to people they were angry with, people they didn't wish well for. They would hide it in their homes or in their graves. Just like black magic. This tablet reads as follows: Philomatio, slave of Postinius. I dedicate his face, his name, his breath, and all his vital organs to the gods of hell. May he hate her, and she hate him, quickly. May his testicles be useless. It is truly a hate-filled inscription. Historical records describe the city before its destruction as complete depravity, indecency, immorality taken to the extreme. Abundance and prosperity had spoiled them. They had no belief in any god. It was a society that worshipped idols. They believed in many false gods. None of them were aware of the disaster awaiting them. Right next to the city was a massive volcano, Mount Vesuvius. Look at the size of that volcano. This would be the beginning of the end for them. Ultimately, the time given to them to correct themselves had run out. October 24th, 79. 8 o'clock in the morning. Hours before the disaster. Everyone woke up to a new day. But it was the last day they would ever wake up to. The volcano began to stir. There were short but violent earthquakes. Investigations revealed that there were some earthquakes before the eruption. For example, in a bakery in the city, millstones were used to mix ingredients. Samples taken from inside revealed traces of lime mortar. These were usually used to fill cracks in the walls. Collapses and repair marks were also found inside the same bakery. There had been so many earthquakes, large and small, in the last year or two that the people now considered it quite normal. Because earthquakes happen and then stop. But that day would be different from other days. About 5 hours later, around 1 o'clock, Mount Vesuvius erupted with full force, with a force much greater than an atomic bomb. The city of Pompeii was soon buried under petrified lava fragments, gas and dust clouds. Most people died from suffocation due to the effects of what is known as a pyroclastic flow after the eruption. Many others were crushed by the collapse of the city or burned to death by volcanic eruptions. 15 hours after the eruption, the city was completely destroyed. There was no trace left of the city's former grandeur. The palaces of the wealthy, their slaves, people enjoying themselves, children running around centuries ago, people planning what to do tomorrow. All of it vanished within just 15 minutes. A visual of the city's discovery centuries after the disaster. The clearest image of the clay layer covering the entire city. Those perfectly crafted architectural structures are buried underground. Excavations reached meters below the surface, and the city was thus uncovered. A 3D reconstruction showing what the city once looked like. So why did these people appear to have experienced no catastrophe as they died? How did they freeze in that state? Were they found like this during the excavations? During the explosion, thousands of large and small stones were scattered around. Almost all the roofs of the houses collapsed due to these stones and the resulting earthquake. Looking at the city's final state, we understand this better. This is how, whether inside or outside, people who had already lost their lives were covered in volcanic ash, which fell within an estimated 10 minutes, turning into mud. And they remained that way for centuries. For exactly 1,700 years. The city was discovered by chance in 1748. It had been reached due to the growing population and expanding cities. The area had soft ground, and excavation began. During the excavation, it was discovered that there were ancient structures underground. Archaeologists were immediately called to the area. At first, they only knew about the existence of the city. Then, during an excavation, human skeletons were found. The ash, which had fallen and turned to mud, quickly covered the dead people. And thanks to this, the shapes of the bodies and facial features that remained underground were all preserved. Subsequently, in order to shed light on history, it was decided to preserve the parts where the bodies were located. There were voids in the areas where the people were because the organs and skin in the body had disappeared over time. So those parts beneath the surface were empty. As seen in this image, drilling was carried out in 3 to 4 different places using a drilling machine. If there was a certain amount of void, it was understood that there was a human being. Then, silicone plaster was poured into these holes and left to dry. After drying, the body was removed in its final state, which we know as petrified. So, in fact, these people we see did not turn to stone about 2,000 years ago. They were trapped inside the ash layer and preserved until today. So why did some people act as if the disaster had never happened? A huge volcano had erupted with energy far more powerful than an atomic bomb. Normally, one would expect people to suddenly act out of fear, or to run around, searching for a way out of the disaster. But in this city, people didn't seem to do that. A moment when a child, perhaps in their mother's or father's arms, was holding hands and playing. After the disaster, the child's hands were damaged over time. The person standing in the corner with their hands in the air was probably holding another child. Some were sleeping. They didn't even have the chance to wake up from their sleep and see what was happening. Despite the huge explosion and the noise, it was impossible. How could such a thing happen? There can only be one explanation for this. Either time suddenly stopped just for them, or the disaster, as described in the film, didn't last long enough for people to run around. It happened in an instant, in a matter of seconds. To me, this is the most astonishing part of everything that happened. This aspect of the event, the destruction of the people of Pompeii, resembles the stories of destruction described in the Quran. Because when the Quran describes the destruction of peoples, it emphasizes sudden annihilation. The Quran has the following verse on this subject. A single scream was enough for them. They instantly vanished. It was clear that the disaster happened suddenly, in a matter of seconds. A body that was discovered during excavations a few years ago. Truly horrifying. This image, showing a piece of rock falling on the head of someone who was walking at the time, perhaps even trying to escape, actually sums up most things. That not a single person in this sinful city was wanted to live. What we need to understand is that these events are not just stories, something you can watch and move on from. There is an important part here. These people, preserved in clay and kept waiting for centuries to appear before us in this way, were sent to Earth so that we might learn from their fate. Of course, we need to see the big picture. They are not sculptures you can see in an art gallery and move on from. They are the living dead, carrying the traces of disaster into our time.